Hey everybody, it's Tony Cottaspati from the Great Vocal Majority uh, website and podcast. I want to talk about what you see on the screen here. This is Obama making his comments yesterday about the terrible shooting where 9 people were killed in Charleston, and just awful kind of tragedy. Actually, tragedy isn't the right word. Atrocity, I think, is more fitting. Obama made his comments when he started off. He made exactly the right comments. Actually, he was doing a really very well, characterizing how the country should treat, especially at this moment. Because remember, this is less than 24 hours after the shooting and all the murders and the apprehension of the person who we believe did it took place. But then Obama veered off, as he always does, into politics after incidents like this. And I want to talk a little bit about the accuracy of what he said. So let me pick up where I think in his comments Obama began to go wrong.
We understand that the suspect is in custody, and I'll let the best of law enforcement do its work to make sure that justice is served. Until the investigation is complete, I'm necessarily constrained in terms of talking about the details of the case.
Bingo. Right there. Stop. That should have been the end of his statement. Right there. That would have been perfect. That would have been exactly right. It would have focused the nation exactly where it needed to be focused, on the lives of the people who were killed and the surviving members of their family, and trying to come together as a country in grief and in support. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't.
But I don't need to be constrained about the emotions that tragedies like this raise. I've had to make statements like this too many times. Communities like this have had to endure tragedies like this too many times. We don't have all the facts, but we do know that, once again, innocent.
We don't have all the facts, but that doesn't stop them. Just like we don't have all the facts, but we can say that the police behaved stupidly. Remember? That's 7 years ago almost at this point. He has never learned to keep politics out of tragedy. I mean, and he's jumping into this before the bodies have been embalmed. I mean, it's really not right what he's doing here. Let's continue.
People were killed in part because someone who wanted to inflict harm had no trouble getting their hands on a gun. Now is the time for mourning and for healing. But let's be clear. At some point, we as a country will have to reckon with the fact that this type of mass violence does not happen in other advanced countries.
Let's talk about that. I want to focus on that. This type of gun violence doesn't happen in mass violence doesn't happen in other countries. How long ago was the Charlie Hebdo massacre in Paris? I mean, we've had a number, and we also have statistics. If you don't like the anecdotal, let's look at the statistical. And I'll show you a few charts now. Before I show you these charts, however, what I really want to start to direct you toward is a really high quality website called IJ, or independentjournalreview.com, where there's this article that I'm going to be highlighting here. It's written by Kyle Becker, who's basically the editor of the site, one of the editors at least. And he wrote this article, 5 Things Obama Didn't Mention When He Blamed America for the Charleston Shooting. And I want to go through some of the charts that he posted in this article. But you could find this article here at this. You could see the web address up here. In any event, let's go to some of the charts just to give you an idea of what he's talking about. Now let me try to do this in a slideshow so you can get a better idea of what he's doing. Here he shows that in his first chart that the frequency of mass shootings in America are rare. So Obama keeps complaining about how this happens in the United States so much more than anywhere else and blah, blah, blah. But this is sourced on FBI statistics that shows that we peaked at 10 incidents. I mean, we're in the single digits every year. Yes, it is rising, but Obama's making it like it's a an epidemic. I would hardly call 6 incidents like this epidemic in a country of over 300 million people. So this is, just one example of how Obama is inflating the problem bigger than it is. It's not that we shouldn't attend to it. It's just that Obama wants to pass legislation to stop 6 events and as many as 10 events. I mean, stop and think about that. Stop and think about what kind of laws we've passed ever to stop single incidents and single digit incident occurrences like this. It just doesn't happen. But go on to the next chart. Mass shootings are not significantly on the rise. And here what Obama has, or what the author has, is he's noted in green the number of victims. So you can see the number of victims do vary, obviously, with the number of incidents. But the number of offenders, pretty low. I mean, it's never been more than 50 except once in looks like 2003 or 4. And the number of incidents have always been low for mass shootings, and that's going for a period of 30 years. This is now, in terms of, I know a lot of this stuff is controversial, so people get all wrapped around the axle about what are your sources. Well, look at this one. This is the Washington Post, based on data from a Northeastern University criminologist. I mean, it's not a conservative leaning source at all. and as the author notes here, it was also reported by CNN. Not exactly, the den of conservative thought. Next, we go to gun violence is down, and the author points out way, way down. And again, it's pointing to surveys of this general social survey, which comes out of Pew Research, which is also a liberal-leaning research arm. And it just shows that do you happen to have a gun in your home? That's gone down. Do any of these guns personally belong to you? And that has gone down. This tends to contradict everything Obama said, but it gets better than this. Here's the rate of firearm homicide deaths. And where is this coming from? The Center for Disease Control, the government. So this is showing that per 100,000 people, since 1997, the rate of firearm homicide deaths mostly flat. So we're not seeing this surge of firearm deaths. We have a bigger population than we did in 1981, probably another 80 million people in the country. So this is a rate per 100,000. So obviously, in terms of raw numbers of people actually being shot, yes, the numbers are higher, but the rate of shooting is not higher at all. In fact, it's a lot lower since 1981. It's almost half if you look at these numbers. I mean, 6.6, peaking out at 7 and now down to 3.6. That's nearly half of what it was at its height. Now, here's the crux of this article. These are two charts. One shows the rate of gun ownership. That's this here in the United States. Look at that. Look how high that is compared to all the other countries. These are developed countries. This is what Obama's point was. Now look at the homicide deaths. The deaths that attributable to guns per 100,000 people. We're 26th. 26th. And look at the countries that are ahead of us. All these South American countries. I mean, we're nowhere near the leading country when it comes to gun crimes. It's just unbelievable. So the point I'm trying to make in this little video is that Obama never stops politicizing things. It's one thing to have your mindset against guns and to be anti-gun, understood. But to do it less than 24 hours after 9 people were murdered, an 87-year-old woman was murdered. I mean, to do it less than 24 hours after that, to point out a political point, just after you said that today is a day for mourning, it's just a really bad move. Just a bad move. I know people don't like hearing me constantly criticize Obama, but my God, I mean, what's going on? This guy deserves to be criticized when he says stuff like this. He could have said these remarks next week. He didn't have to say them yesterday. But he wanted to strike while the iron was hot because he has an agenda. His agenda it doesn't have anything to do with those people lying dead in that church. His agenda has to do with controlling your guns. And that's all I have to say. Sorry about that, but that's all I have to say about it. Thanks a lot, guys.